He's so dangerous. Freddy Krueger has nightmares about him.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Hive. I'm Dallen Stanford, and despite my South African accent, I was fortunate enough to play rugby for the United States on the Sevens World Series.
And I'm MacDowell, a former Canadian Sevens international. Back in my playing days, I went head-to-head against Dallen in the USA.
For several years, Robin has coached international sevens for various countries, including Canada and Mexico. He's massively passionate about growing the game across the Americas through his MacDowell rugby programs at all levels. I'm currently a commentator for World Rugby, most recently broadcasting the Rugby World Cup in Japan, as well as the amazing Sevens World Series.
More than a decade later, we are teaming up to bring you insights from legendary players and coaches from around the world.
All legends have a story. The Rugby Hive podcast is here to share it.
Welcome to the Hive.
Oh, he's more dangerous than climate change.
Today's guest is one of the greatest rugby players of all time, an inspiration on and off the field. Winner of the Rugby World Cup, British and Irish Lions Series, Tri-Nations, Currie Cup, Super Rugby, Top 14, Heineken Cup and European Champions Cup, the score of a record 67 test tries, and a career that spanned 124 internationals for the Springboks. Here is South African legend Bryan Habana. All right, it's the idea behind the Rugby Hive, exploring rugby legends, and it's such an honor to have someone that runs faster than I can talk. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Habana.
Dal, maybe just where we now, maybe 13 years ago, I'm racing against tortoises now, and you actually talk pretty quickly. So retirement definitely has slowed me down just a little bit.
Well, listen, how are you keeping that side, my friend? You've got a busy family, of course, on the go. Pre-pandemic, you were flying across the world, but now you're doing wonderful work in South Africa as well. How things that side, my friend?
Yeah, obviously, just from a pandemic standpoint, we're now 14 weeks in. I think you start losing count after day 30 odd. Everyone very positive initially. I think our president and the government got in before this really started, getting bootstrapped. And I just think the frustration over the course of the last couple of weeks has definitely crept in. Lockdown levels, I think we're at level, I think it's like 3.5 at the moment in South Africa. A lot of confusion, frustration with regards to certain elements. I think for me, it has been really cool doing some foundation and humanitarian stuff over the course of the last 8 weeks in particular, going out there and trying to make an impact where food insecurity is literally at a massive scale. And this pandemic has only highlighted the disparity between the rich and the poor in South Africa. And we're only now approaching our peak, which they say is could potentially come end of July, beginning of August. So still a long way to go. And I think it is a new normal that no one really knows how to navigate through at the moment. But trying to stay positive. I started doing challenges week 1 to 3 and haven't done any social media challenges for quite a while.
Well, listen, it's just been brilliant seeing you connecting also with some of the current rugby players as well, and just giving back to the community. We're supporting and watching from afar as well, Bryan. But let's kick off. Let's go right back. Tell our viewers the story behind your given name, Bryan, and your middle name, Gary.
So I just born 1983. It was a good year. It was a really good year. But named after Brian Robson and Gary Bailey, two Manchester United sporting legends. My dad, a massive Manchester United fan, and it was purely around, I don't think they knew it in the beginning, but hopefully potentially gave me the opportunity to go on and achieve some form of greatness. And I grew up wanting to be the next South African export into the English Premiership.
And outside of rugby, growing up, what sports did you enjoy as a kid?
Growing up, so I actually never knew rugby really, Robin, growing up. I was doing soccer, athletics for most of the first 11 years of my life. And, rugby was the furthest thing from my mind. And like everyone knows, that 1995 Rugby World Cup and what it meant to so many South Africans, got the opportunity to inspire an 11, 12-year-old boy to witness something that not only united a nation, brought people together, broke down socioeconomic backgrounds, made us for a very brief period in time forget about, the apartheid era and what had happened for most of the 40 years prior to that. And lit a fire inside me to want to try do the same one day. Want to try emulate, those heroes, emulate Nelson Mandela walking out there in that number 6 Springbok jersey and bringing people together under a united banner. and in so doing, make me start dreaming big of hopefully one day wanting to do the same.
It's an amazing story. We've had Joel Stransky on and a few other South African legends that were obviously on the field that day, and I hope you've told them that story.
Yeah, so I've got some pretty cool stories, to be brutally honest, about that experience. So my dad sort of took me out of school for the first time ever. We drove from Cape Town to Johannesburg. I'm from Johannesburg down to Cape Town. But actually before that, I went to go watch the last Springbok training at the Wanderers Rugby Club, which is literally probably about a 10-kilometer drive from Ellis Park. But sort of it was still very not even, it was not professional. It was very amateur. So the guys were training and it was blood, sweat and tears. You could see Christie had his handle and all this. And post the training, all these little youngsters, I was 11 years old, about this short, literally, and sort of waiting for autographs outside the change rooms where the guys were getting showered and dressed to go home. And going home meant getting in their own cars because the game was still amateur. So it wasn't like getting on a team bus going to training. And sort of waiting for autographs. All the players started coming out and were giving autographs to the kids around. And as Francois Pienaar came out, he actually chose 3 of us. We were like, okay, cool. Francois Pienaar chose us to get autographs. And we then walked with Francois carrying his bags to his car. And on putting the bags in the car, he sort of took out an item, I want to say of memorabilia, item of clothing for each of us. And I got one of Francois Pienaar's training jerseys literally before the Rugby World Cup that I slept in, trained in, did everything in for about 5-6 years post that experience. And I actually got to tell Francois about that 4 years ago. And, sort of that symbolic gesture of handing over a mantle that would one day, see me do the same, which is pretty cool. I actually, on this whole lockdown, sort of trying to sort out jerseys and stuff, pulled it out the other day, and it's very faded blue cotton traders jersey that's still extremely massive for me. But yeah, pretty cool story.
Oh, Bryan, that's remarkable, and it kind of does go to show, how you've spearheaded the next generation of young people coming through by leading by example. And a small gesture like that, it's amazing. You never know how far it's going to go.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, I was actually chatting to Alton Yankees yesterday, or Junches, like it was to be called. We were doing a food parcel drop in Johannesburg, and the story came out that he was for 13 years of his life very angry at me, and the reason he was angry was because I walked past him in 2007 and didn't give him an autograph that he wanted to have. So yeah, there's positives and negatives both ways, but yeah, stories like that are pretty cool, and being able to, this was 95 to 2016, so 21 years later, being able to share that story with Francois in person was pretty epic.
That's brilliant. You got to sign something for Elton, just so you can erase those memories.
Yeah, I think I initiated him at the Springbok, so hopefully that's
there we go.
enough.
Exactly. Bryan, let's switch gears now to America. The Black Lives Matter movement has made a tremendous impact here in the United States. It's teaching all people, particularly people like myself, as white South African and white American now, how to be anti-racist, not just not racist. It's obviously something that you mentioned in South Africa. We know has had issues for generations. What are your experience with regards to racism?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, Dallen, to be brutally honest. So, I didn't grow up underprivileged, like, many or 60% of our population here in South Africa. I got given the best opportunities to make a success of my life, and that was getting, the opportunity to go to great schools, great universities. My mom and dad, even though they, had to go through a lot of the hardships of the apartheid era, we weren't really exposed to that as kids. So, we had white friends, black friends, colored friends, Indian friends, blue, pink. And I think, in that and in growing up in that mentality, you're potentially shielded from a lot of what can go wrong. Going to a great school like King Edward's where, everyone, is only there on merit and merit alone. I think I was fairly protected from it. And I think in that, I was probably very naive. And you hear the stories of a Siya Kolisi who, when we were winning the World Cup in 2007, I was watching that experience in the Shebeen, which is a bar type shack in the rural townships because his grandmother couldn't afford a TV. Or you hear the stories of a Makazoli Mapimpi who I learned last week, literally had to walk 20 kilometers to and from school 5 days a week for 5 years of his life. Those were things that I never ever had to encounter or experience. And I think what the Black Lives Matters movement is highlighting, is trying to not only level the playing fields, but allow everyone to truly valuably see the equality that we should be seeing. Seeing the differentiation in white and black and how that is portrayed. And there have been many instances, obviously highlighted by the George Floyd killing, but many instances over the course of history in South Africa, in our culture, again with that whole apartheid era and the minority, holding that power over the majority for such a long period of time. And we're unfortunately, going through things in South Africa where, because of apartheid, because of oppression, our lowest or our least educated population is sort of segregated to the furthest parts of the cities and stuff. And I always get asked, like, how do you fix that? Do you go back 50 years and try to change things? But like you said, I think it's about educating people about how it's not about, again, seeing a color, but it's about seeing the actual behavioral changes that need to happen. And I think, that is sort of come down to the lowest level, because of this George Floyd killing and what it has happened, and not just in the United States, but across the world. And hopefully in so doing, we're all educated in the way we talk, communicate, and the way we perceive life to actually happen.
On that related topic, Bryan, it's well known how Nelson Mandela used rugby to help unite a divided nation. What were your memories from the Rugby World Cup in '95, outside of obviously the famous jersey from Francois?
Yeah, Robin. So obviously, as a young South African, I'll never forget. I think at school we actually had to do this democratic election, for our favorite cricketer in '94, when all the adults were actually going to the voting stations. And I think as a youngster, you didn't really understand the impact that would have. I think it was only later on in life when I got to meet Nelson Mandela, when I got to fully understand his story. I think the self-sacrifice of having been in jail for 27 years, but not holding any form of judgment, using the platform that he was given to truly unite people. And I think what Nelson Mandela as a visionary did, he saw the opportunity and the role that sport had to play in uniting a nation. And 95 was incredible. I was then fortunate enough in 96 to go to the Africa Cup of Nations that Neil Tovey and his Bafana team won. And again, to see how in 95, a previously white sport had united the country, but now in 96, a team of mostly black South Africans were bringing people together. And we've seen these occasions throughout South African sporting history. And I'm very fortunate that rugby has, for most of the time, been the overriding factor in that. But these sporting moments bringing people together, and I sat there in 95, a colored youngster in South Africa, with the potential to potentially not go anywhere because of the barriers that had been in our society previously. But to sit in that stadium at Ellis Park in 95 on the 24th of June and hear a crowd, 90-odd% mostly white people, chanting Nelson, Nelson. And 10 years, not even 5 years prior, that would have never ever happened. And I think Nelson saw the power that sport had. He fully understood how that could speak to the youth in a language they really understand and bring people together. And I think those vivid memories of seeing Nelson, walk out there in that number 6 Springbok jersey, of seeing someone like Chester Williams become the poster boy for South African rugby during that time frame, was something that was really inspiring to me. And it was not because I was looking at color, but because I was seeing what could be achieved through the values of sport and rugby in particular.
Incredible story. So inspirational as well. And just, I love how powerful our game is, and trying to describe to different people across North America what the opportunities there are in rugby and the inclusivity of rugby compared to a lot of other North American sports. That's what's got its hooks into me as a young athlete. So you being a soccer athletics young child, and in Canada we grew up playing ice hockey. So it's our pathway to the sport is changed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, geez, I got to watch ice hockey for the first time in 2016 when I got back into the blitz box with the South African 7 setup, and that hand-eye coordination is some of the most incredible I've ever seen. So wouldn't mind having a dab loaded. I don't think I would have survived that. It's pretty brutal.
We get you up north here. We'll teach you how to skate. No worries. So earlier in your career, you played a bit of centers and halfback. Do you remember who moved you to the wing, and what made you fall in love with that position once you transition out wide?
Yeah, well, it wasn't, to be honest, no one actually moved me to the wing. So what happened was I was the tiniest guy at school, and I only had a growth spurt. I only had a growth spurt just when I left school. And then Eugene Eloff actually moved me from scrum half to outside center. You sort of got this thing that there are quite a number of good centers in South Africa. You had your likes of a Farid Priya, Enrico January, Bola Conradi. And he said, like, if I potentially move to 13, I can use my pace and my power and the size that I've now grown into to better use. And that sort of went really, really well. And as an outside center, I had a fantastic first year on the senior level. As a 21-year-old, I got to play in the S under 21 team under Peter de Villiers that went and unfortunately lost to New Zealand in the 2004 World Cup. But then got back, had a phenomenal Currie Cup run and got chosen to be involved in the Springbok setup on that 2004 end of year tour. And myself and Jock Fourie were both on the bench as outside backs. And I was actually covering center for Davet Barry or Maurice Joubert. And both Jean de Villiers and Brayton Forster, who were the wings at the time or in that game, got injured at exactly the same time. So myself and Jock then both went onto the field as wings. And I played wing a bit, like maybe 2 or 3 times throughout my rugby career, but I never literally played wing. And went onto the field, scored a try with my first touch of the ball in international rugby, and stayed there for most of the 124 Test matches that I played.
It's an incredible story. And you talk about inspirational players. Brenton Palsy, even though I was Canadian, I had a game of South Africa versus Canada VHS back in the day, and it was the only game I had, so I watched it over and over again. I watched this little Brenton Palser, and I was just a young winger at the time too, so he was my hero growing up. Just how creative he could be
Robin,
at that young age. Yeah. So what advice would you give to young aspiring finishers out there? What are some things that, obviously outside of pace, what are some things they can work on?
I think as a young winger, obviously, for me, there are definitely 3 non-negotiables for any rugby player to want to be successful. It's your discipline, your dedication, and your sacrifice. Because I think without those 3 non-negotiables, you do need luck along the way. You do need a coach to spot you or back you or potentially select you. You do need, a lucky bounce here and there. So if you have those 3 non-negotiables, they're really important to achieve success, especially in the modern professional game. And as a youngster, I only went to gym for the first time ever when I was like 17 or 18 years old. The modern game has definitely changed that dynamic. Getting young players either contracted out of school or the professional era has just started a lot younger. Advice for a young winger, I think, is to adapt your game in ways in which the opposition can't expect you to be in the places you arrive on the field. Because, and I talk early 2000s, a winger's role was only to stay on your wing, be the receiving the last pass and scoring tries. But I think today's modern game, some of the biggest and best wingers are those that are found in places that the opposition potentially doesn't see where they are. So your skill set of high ball catching, I think, is extremely important in this kicking game that has developed over the course of the last 15 years. So again, your fundamentals are incredibly important, but making sure you continuously adapt to pop up in places where the opposition doesn't expect you. And in so doing, you can use your pace, you can use your skill, and you can use your attributes to do things that your opposition wouldn't expect.
Let's switch across to sevens, Bryan. You mentioned playing with the Blitzboks early in your career. There's a large group of people that think that sevens does nothing for 15s players. So what are your thoughts on using the shortened version of the game to develop talent?
I think as a young player, there's a lot of attributes from the sevens game that definitely could help you in making the transition to 15s. I think the difficulty that we have in the modern game is that both sevens and 15s is a full-time job. Back in the day, sevens was unfortunately not a full-time job. So it was sort of a stepping stone to hopefully get to higher things, where the intensity, the physicality, the level of training now within the sevens environment, almost doesn't allow you to make that adaptation to the 15-man game. But I think your awareness of what is around you, your ability to again come up and constantly have to peak at an intensity rate for that 14-minute period, which actually feels like 140 minutes when you come back into the game from a 15-man perspective. So I think there are certain attributes. I think the skill set that Sevens gives from a passing perspective, a work rate perspective, is absolutely phenomenal. I think the biggest thing that happens when a lot of the guys from the 15-man environment try out for the Sevens is they just find out that constant having to get up and knowing that you are going to be the weakest link in the team if you're constantly staying on the floor. So, your work rate, your passing, the ability to beat players in a one-on-one situation in Sevens, can be translated. But we have also seen is a lot of the players from the Sevens environment potentially haven't been able to make the transition over to the 15-man game, because all of a sudden there's a lot more players covering the same type of field. So, the space and the dynamics is not quite the same. So, two very different types of game at the moment. And like I said, I think there are a few that have made the transition, but there's also quite a few that have tried and unfortunately failed.
Yeah, there's a lot of space. As Robin and I found out, we've been stepped and rounded like park cars for many years on the series. But listen, of all the tries you've scored, we don't have enough time on this podcast to run through them, of course. Hundreds, if you count all the club rugby and everything else in professional era. Is there one try that stands out for you?
There is one, but I'm going to say there's two. So I think for me, that first try against England on debut, obviously, I couldn't have, the only way I could have asked for a better start was if South Africa didn't actually get pummeled that day, and we won the game 32-16 instead of losing 32-16. But I think that one, arriving on the scene with no one really knowing who I was, sort of made a fantastic foundation for what was to come in my career. And then I get asked, like, what is my best try ever? And it is actually not even playing for the Springboks. It was playing for the Bulls against the Blues at Loftus. I literally just scored a try 5 meters out from the kickoff. Luke McAllister kicked deep, collected straight from the kickoff, rounded Dougie Howlett, ran past Albie Mathieson on the left-hand touchline, chipped over Ethan Nathiwa, and then I had Joe Rokotoko sort of lurking on my left-hand side. And I think what does make it even more enjoyable is Hugh Bladen's soundtrack, from kickoff to finish, which was pretty exceptional. And then the Loftus crowd, which had 50-odd thousand people in the stadium, that all went berserk.
Yeah, I will say it's amazing to hear Hugh Bladen on the mic back in the day, and one thing that stands out is the way he would say your name too, when you just get so excited. And he may have been a bottle of brandy deep as it was epic to watch and your try. So let's go to 2007 Rugby World Cup. What did your side possess, or what did you guys do better than anybody else to win that tournament?
Dallen, it's difficult to say what exactly we did right. I think there was a lot of belief, from the outset. I think again we had a lot of luck as well. The ABs and Australia both getting kicked out in that quarterfinal stage, and we had a bounce of a ball against Tonga, where literally a bounce of the ball, would have seen us lose instead of beat Tonga. JP Peterson's tackle in that quarterfinal against Fiji in Marseille. So it was also, again, I think first and foremost, you have to look at your leadership. So Jake White came in with a clearly defined plan of what he wanted to achieve as a Springbok coach. He then got a group of players together, first and foremost from a leadership perspective, putting things into place where we as players could follow. So the likes of a Percy Montgomery that he brought back, Osturant, who, he sort of managed all the way to France in 2004. He even brought back someone like Yaku van der Westhuizen from Japan in that initial time frame, just to start molding players and getting a successful mentality within that squad. And Robin, I know you talk about Creighton Pulse. I'll never forget walking into that Springbok environment for the first time ever and seeing like my heroes, Percy Montgomery. Also, I walked past Percy, he didn't know who I was at the team hotel. I was like, has he not watched any Currie Cup over the last 3 weeks? But walking into that environment. So I think what Jake got right is he got a group of leaders around him that were able to be the driving force for where the team wanted to go. I also think that through all the success, we also had a lot of character building time or games that we had to go through to grow as a team. And people almost tend to forget in 2006, we lost 49-0 against Australia. We had a run of 6 losses, one of the longest stretches ever in a Springbok time frame. Jake White almost got fired at that end of year tour after losing to England. And we just literally came together. We had a pretty poor Tri Nations back in 2007 as well, pre-World Cup, but it was sort of that basis from going into training after the Tri Nations to John Smith telling us when we got on the flight en route to Paris in 2007, he said that when we get to France, we're going to arrive there like champions. Champions in the way we train, champions in the way we address the public, champions in the way in which we address the media, champions in everything we do. Jake White was also strategic in getting extreme knowledge like Eddie Jones, Dr. Cheryl Calder, the eye visual doctor, who again added these elements that when everything was put together, yes, all the players probably peaked at the right time. They were at the top of the game throughout that tournament, but each and every person's arrow was facing in the same direction to have been able to achieve success.
Can you describe what it meant for the Rainbow Nation bringing the Rugby World Cup back home in 2007?
It's very difficult to describe, Robin. I think for all of us having played that tournament in France, and even though we knew the support we were getting, we'd seen the videos, we'd seen the photos, we'd seen everything happening in South Africa as that journey continued. And I've said on many occasions that, when that final whistle went, your first immediate emotional reaction is pure relief, through all the sacrifice, all the dedication, all the effort you put into that journey to gain success at the pinnacle of your career. But I don't think any one of us in that Springbok environment, fully understood what we were going to be seeing when we got back home to South Africa 4 days later. And it only fully came to the fore when we landed at OR Tambo, and it was just absolute mayhem in every good sense of the word. We had people and thousands of people arriving at the stadium and the trophy tour around the country and what that meant. And I think for us as players, going on that trophy tour around the country, seeing Black kids in the rural townships of the Eastern Cape running barefoot for a kilometer or two behind that bus just to get a glimpse of their heroes, get a glimpse of hope, get a glimpse of inspiration, was something that we could then tangibly relate to all that hard work, all that sacrifice, all that dedication that we put through into that 4-year period to be able to unite the nation, to be able to give people hope where in normal circumstances they wouldn't have any of it. And I think that for us was as great as winning the World Cup was, as great as getting that gold medal put over your head is, being able to see the impact that made was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I watched the Campo story when I was a young guy on VHS again, just to date myself a little more. But again, over and over and over and over again, and glimpses of the Hong Kong Sevens and stuff. And I think it was Michael Liner talking about his number one thing about when they won their World Cup was just the impact and growth and how many kids signed up across Australia the next year. And I've never won a World Cup, of course, but helping Mexico qualify for a Sevens World Cup, the thing that I look back on is the growth. So the Mexican women were down the depth chart for how many females were playing the sport in the country. And by the end of 2018, after we'd gone to the World Cup, so just about a year after we qualified for the World Cup, the registration for female women across Mexico had rose even above the U.S. and Canada for amount of women playing the sport. So the standard's not there yet, but they they fell in love with the sport and they realized that they can get a ball.
That's brilliant,
play.
fantastic, well done.
Yeah. So one of the when Dallen said we're going to get you on, I said I have to ask him about the cheetah. So one of the craziest things I've ever witnessed in sports. And just thinking about this question, like the only thing I can relate it to, and I've shared this with Dallen, but I when I moved to the middle of Canada for a decade there to coach sports, I got into rodeo and I got on some bulls and some bucking horses, and the only thing get me that excited from playing in stadiums. So what was that like? How did that come about? And at any point did you want to pull shoot on it?
Geez, Robin. So it has definitely blown out of proportion. We initially got contacted by a cheetah conservationist about wanting to try raise awareness about the plight of the cheetah becoming an extinct animal. And we're like, okay, cool. Obviously South Africa, we grew up, in nature, going to game reserves and experiencing the big five. We'd had father and son weekends. So, I love the bush. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to, play my part in raising awareness about, what's happening. So they were sort of in communication with my dad around this whole experience. I'm like, oh no, we're gonna get you to race the thing. And I think when I initially heard it, I was like, okay, cool. Like you'll be like in a secured, barriered, fence type environment. And then we got to the game farm on the Thursday morning, and I'll never forget. Obviously, the build up to that was pretty tough for me because it was in the middle of Super Rugby. Heineke Meyer, when he found out like that I'm going to be racing this cheetah world, like he literally blew his lid. He was like, "What are you thinking?" Like, I think we were playing the Crusaders or something that Saturday. Like, no, coach, I promise you, I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'll warm up properly. I think I even got them to get like a stationary bike there just so I can warm up properly. And so we get there, and I sort of get to this environment, and like this massive stand that had been built, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Then like I'm talking to the ranger, I'm like, okay, cool. So what's happening? He goes, okay, well the cheetah's going to be coming out of there, and sort of that is the finish line. I'm like looking at this very patchy piece of grass. I'm like, okay, well, just explain the strategy. No, they planted the grass about 3 weeks ago. I'm like, my professional rugby player brain is like, okay, cool. And there's okay, so it's not like you're gonna even out flatten piece. I'm like, okay, okay, cool. And like, so where's it? Where on which side of the fence? Like, I'm looking at the fence is the other side of the grandstand. I'm like, so which side of the fence am I running on? And it's like, oh no, you see this little piece of string running down this middle of the patchy grass. I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, the cheetah's going to be on the left hand side, and you're going to be on the right hand side, and that piece of string sort of the pulley for the lure that the cheetah has to follow. And I'm like, now, whoa. Like, just explain again. So there's no barrier between me and the cheetah. He's like, no, well, that was never the point of the. I'm like, okay. Now I'm already like, okay, now like the alarm bells are going left, right, and center. I'm like, okay. Let me just. So the cheetah's running right next to me. There's nothing in between us. Is there is there some form of a person or people to at least do something if well the cheetah's very tame, you don't have to worry, but if you are worrying, like we're gonna have a game ranger, he's gonna have a tranquilizer gun. And I'm like, okay, well, first and foremost, where's this ranger standing? How good is his shot? And how sure am I that he's not going to shoot me and the cheetah if something does happen? So I'm literally like just trying to work out all these mathematical calculations, and I'm like, okay, well, if the cheetah does decide to see my behind and look at that rump instead of the lure that it's actually supposed to be chasing. He said, no, don't worry. So, and then they're like, at what point do I actually start running? They're like, well, we've got some of our workers doing it like in the last like couple of weeks. I'm like, well, how fast are your workers? Like, when do I start running? Because this thing is like going to get to like 90 odd kilometers an hour at, in less than 3 seconds. So it literally was only to raise awareness of the plight of the cheetah becoming an extinct species, and became this absolutely mammoth, YouTube watched clip that did raise a lot of awareness, potentially for the wrong reasons though.
And listen, what speed did you clock? Because we've watched that over and over again. You have a head start, but jeepers, you obviously must have been motoring.
Yeah, so I mean, thank goodness there wasn't a speed gun. It probably might have been the quickest I'd ever run in my life, to be brutally honest. No, it's again, I don't say it. We didn't quite have the technology like we do today in the sevens that you can see real time, what the players are running. But I'd probably think I'd hopefully have got up to about a 37 and a half kilometer an hour pace. But yeah, as fast as I was running, I was much more happier seeing the cheetah pass me.
Unbelievable, Bryan. Unbelievable. Let's go back to your on-field career. Just going through some of your highlights, winning, competitions like Super Rugby, Currie Cup, Top 14, Heineken Cup, European Champions Cup. The list goes on and on. So, from your experience, out of those leagues, what was the toughest to play in, and why?
Dallen, first and foremost, I think every league in its own right was tough. I think it's unfair to compare one league to the other. Super Rugby, the pace of it, the travel of going from South Africa to New Zealand, and I was fortunate that I sort of played it when it was still its true form of Super Rugby, where you got to play every weekend against every team in the competition. And again, Currie Cup, its physicality and its brutality, so from a South African environment, and how the tradition with that and those local derbies are pretty intense. And then going up north, being able to try and explain to people, coming from a Southern Hemisphere background where you played Super Rugby, it was just Super Rugby, you finished Super Rugby, and then you went on to Currie Cup. To now all of a sudden go to Europe and then play, a couple of games of top 14, and then have to switch your mindset into playing European Champions Cup for 1 or 2 weekends, and then getting back into top 14 and doing that for a year-long period, had its own challenges. And I tell people, I don't think you can say one competition is tougher than the other, because in its different elements, both competitions and both hemispheres have their own pros and cons, their advantages and disadvantages. And I think I'm extremely grateful that I got to be successful in both environments, and hopefully in so doing, highlight the fact that, there's not one tougher than the other, and that both have their metrics and standards that I think each and every player loves to try, hopefully get to play at in some point in their career.
And you've played with many players, over your time career as well, for different teams. Are there a couple of players that stand out that you really enjoyed being on the field with? I know that's kind of tough because you've played with so many.
Yeah, no, I got to play with some incredible players throughout the course of my career. I think, one of the best rugby players I think the game has ever seen, just in terms of the way he was able to dictate a game, was Fourie du Preez. He was not only mentally, one of the strongest I've ever played with, but tactically was one of the best. I think the combinations of a Victor Matfield and a Bucky Sport, the leadership ability of a John Smith, the absolute mongrel that is Skulkberger, the class that is Percy Montgomery. I think getting to play with someone like Johnny Wilkinson at Toulon was, one of the highlights of my career. And getting to see the stature that Johnny is, getting to see his work ethic, the respect he commands. I don't think there has ever been an Englishman who has, God Save the Queen, played at Stade de France for them. And if that doesn't tell you how well Johnny was revered across the world, particularly in the French-English rivalry, nothing more. But I'm extremely fortunate to have played with so many. And I think for me, someone like Jacques Fourie, his finishing ability, I don't think he ever had a bad game in that Springbok jersey. Started when he was 19 years old. But got to play with some absolutely unbelievable players.
Yeah, speaking of Jacques Fourie, got a chance to meet him in Japan during the Rugby World Cup last year, and he was telling the wonderful story of him and Dries Becker, who were on the bench during the British and Irish Lions 2009 tour. And when he scored that try and knocked over 4 people to dive in, he said it was because he was overweight, carrying so much because he was a reserve and was just eating so much in his room. So let's talk about that year, though. 2009, I don't know what was in the water, my friend. You won the Currie Cup Super Rugby with the Bulls. You lifted the Tri-Nations trophy, and you were involved with the British and Irish Lions victory. And I think you got married in the same year as well.
Yeah, it was without a doubt. I get asked quite. Everyone refers to 2007, winning Super Rugby with the Bulls for the first time, World Cup, and yes, that was special. But without a doubt, 2009 was the most successful year I've ever been involved in. Like you rightly stated, we beat the Chiefs by a record margin in that Super Rugby final at Loftus. I think the score was 61-17. Then went on to beat the British and Irish Lions in that series, which again, post 97 was something we as Springboks really wanted to do. Beat the All Blacks for the second year in a row in New Zealand to then win the Tri-Nations, come back, win a Currie Cup with the Bulls, my first ever Currie Cup, scoring 2 tries in that final, and then sort of capping the rugby year off by beating the All Blacks as the Barbarians, scoring a hat-trick of tries at Twickenham was pretty special. And then getting married, literally just put the cherry on the cake. So it was an absolutely phenomenal year, from the Bulls to the Springboks. It was one of the most dominant years, and I think Richie McCaw actually talks about that Springbok side in his autobiography, about that side and the toughness that we had, and one of the toughest side he's ever got to face. And the caliber of players involved in each and every team, in each and every setup, made 2009 a year that probably won't easily be surpassed.
We're going to transition back to sevens again, Bryan. So after one of the most storied 15s rugby careers of all time, you went back to sevens briefly ahead of the 2016 Olympic Games. What would you say are the biggest differences from when you played earlier in your career on the circuit?
Well, the main difference is the professionalism of the sport. When I started out in 2004, like I said earlier, it was literally seen as the side part of rugby. It wasn't seen as this professional era, and I think the reason it did become that, and you look at the likes of HSBC that have partnered with Sevens, for the better part of the last 10 or 11 years. So that big boom they talk about, or the explosion in 2010 when Sevens got elected into the 2016 Olympics, and seeing how coaches, unions, players started gearing themselves towards fully making the Sevens setup as professional as possible. I think it was maybe just towards the end of 2008 or 9 that Sevens players actually started becoming contracted to the Sevens environment. And when that got announced that rugby is going to be in the Olympics, it became a fully fledged professional setup, not only for the men's but for the women's. We saw the development of the women's game exceed at a rapid rate, in preparation for that. And I think because of how the series then started gearing towards, everyone was wanting to be a part of a World Cup. Yes, everyone was wanting to be a part of the series, but Sevens players were now building themselves towards a career of hopefully being at the Olympics and representing their country at something that no other rugby player had ever had the opportunity to do. So again, from an intensity perspective, and Dallen will know, Chester Williams, I'll never forget that first time I had a training down here in the Western Cape in Bellville, and just that 4-on-7 defense drill almost made me say I'm not going to play rugby ever again. I'm like, that defensive drill, I was like, I'm out, Chester, I'm out. Don't even call me back. I'm out. I cannot do this. So from an intensity perspective, the physical attributes has always been there for the game. But it was potentially in the early years seen as something that you either do for the fun of it. It wasn't the frontline players doing it. It was sort of the extremities of the squad now getting involved in it. So the professionalism of it has skyrocketed. I think the growth of the game, taking the game of Sevens to so many people around the world, from Vancouver to Vegas to San Diego to, they were in Sydney, in Brisbane, Hamilton, Wellington. My first ever tournament was in Wellington, and you had 45,000 people at the Cape Town. So yeah, I think Sevens is just something totally different, something so unique, and I think something that is enjoyed by so many, because I really believe it is an easy entry point into the game of rugby. I think people understand it. It's fast-paced, fast-going type of environment, but camaraderie, the solace in the atmosphere with so many different nations celebrating their teams, celebrating the underdogs, and loving seeing exceptional pieces of skill and pace. And I think what it does present to the world is that easy entry point that makes you fall in love with the game of rugby if 15 doesn't do it for you anyway.
And Bryan, we see you on the Seven Series a lot these days now as your role with HSBC. Can you talk a bit about what you do for them? And also a question we have from some of our viewers and listeners is, how did Nolly Waterman smash tackle you into the pool with the Cape Town Sevens last year?
Yeah, so again, I'm extremely fortunate to be on the HSBC ambassador role for the Sevens. A fantastic company, a fantastic entity that has really given so much towards the game of Sevens, and not only at the highest level but at grassroots level as well, Dallen. And I think for me that has sort of been one of the highlights over the course of the last two or so years, is being able to see their grassroots activities in the likes of America, Dubai, South Africa, Hong Kong, where I got to go to for the first time last year. And I think because they've been such an important partner of the Sevens environment over the course of the last 10 years, and I think for them it is literally about that inclusivity. I think they were a strong bystander in making sure, and supporter in making sure, that the women's game, got to the levels where it is, where 6 of the 8 tournaments are now intertwined with the men. And yeah, Cape Town in December 2019, I have definitely marked it. I am going to be an elephant about it. I've filed it. I'm not going to forget Danielle Waterman and how she potentially embarrassed me in front of my own people. But it did give me an opportunity just to remind people that I was wearing the Springbok budgie smugglers long before Faf de Klerk actually was.
That bloody classic. I did see that. It was good photos of you in action. Very clever. She has been on our podcast, and she did say she's waiting, and just she'll be had one of these days.
And I've got to get it back. She actually then also, we had an experience in Dubai with George Gregan in December last year, and I don't know how we got onto the topic, but she got asked to please show how she rap tackled a French woman, like in a try-saving tackle. And I then literally had to now role play Danielle Waterman had bear hugging me in not scoring a try in front of about 150 odd fairly intoxicated people, in the HSBC Premier Stand in Dubai. So I've got quite a few moments that I need to not only file but need to rectify at some point. So she knows I'm coming for her. She definitely knows I'm coming for her.
Sounds like she's the next one to race a cheetah.
No, I think I'm going to get her racing against a rhino. They move pretty quickly, and unlike a cheetah, that sharp horn can potentially cause a lot of damage.
Brilliant. Bryan, let's stay with working with young kids. I got a chance to meet you for the first time in Los Angeles through the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, and on my resume, I still put that one time I intercepted a ball from you and a 10-year-old. It was a classic. But talk about being involved with that organization and getting to be an ambassador there.
Yeah, so again, the Laureus and its academy, I think everyone sees the Laureus Awards where sporting athletes from around the world are accredited and given the title of being the best sportsman or woman in their specific environment. But I think the underlying tone of the Laureus Sports for Good and the impact that it's having on so many kids around the world is something I've really lent my heart to over the course of the last 11 years. I've been an ambassador for 11 years, and I was fortunate to be inducted into the Laureus Academy this year, member number 69, alongside some of the best that the world of sport has ever got to see. And I sort of walked into that room, and the likes of a Michael Johnson, the Sean Fitzpatrick, who's the chairman, obviously comes with a huge role. But I'm sort of walking in there, I'm like, do I even deserve to be here? I'm like, why? Nadia Comaneci, the first ever person to score perfect 10 in gymnastics. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I'm sort of, my mind is just blown. Like Boris Becker, all these absolute legendary sporting figures. And yeah, I think being able to see the work that the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation actually do, being able to see the impact they have using sport as a tool for social change, using sport as a tool to allow people to be inspired or be given hope, and in so doing make a meaningful impact on this world. I think they have something ridiculous, like over 300,000 children that are in some way or other, being really affected positively through their programs throughout the world. And to have seen the rise, and Nelson Mandela said it at the opening of the academy in 2000 that sport has the power to change the world. And I think with that message, with that ability to use the platform that we've been given to positively impact this world, through Laureus is a massive honor and privilege.
And Bryan, that leads to the next question for you, which is, tell us about the Bryan Habana Foundation and the goal, when you set that up in 2015.
Yes, Dan, thanks. So the Bryan Habana Foundation I set up in 2015, obviously knowing the life that sport has given me, the privilege that I've been able to get through rugby, and how much I have appreciated, what it has meant to me, not only as a person, but being able to see the inspiration that it has given to others. And I think initially the main objective of the foundation was around youth leadership. And I think for me, youth leadership, because they are the future. These young kids around the world are going to be those ones becoming leaders within their schooling environments, within their communities, within their cities, and hopefully within their countries. And if I can sort of pass on, some of those skills that I learned throughout my rugby career to be able to allow these kids to potentially come out of their circumstances, but continue to be inspired to dream bigger things for their life, and in so doing make immediate impact in their environments, and hopefully in so doing create long-term leaders. We know, and given how this pandemic has continued, evolving, how important leadership is. And I think for me in particular, it potentially has changed in 2020, with the pandemic and the need, from a food insecurity perspective faced by so many in South Africa, to, focus a lot on the humanitarian aspect with regards to humanitarian aid. But yeah, in so doing, using my foundation as a vehicle to continue inspiring, giving hope to those who potentially would have never had any, and in so doing, hopefully create leaders that, can give this world and make this world a better place.
Bryan, how can people support and get behind the sensational work that you're doing?
Yeah, Robin, obviously I'm a one-man show at the moment, and I'm probably not the best at the governance of it. So, getting a lot of legal stuff done, but, people can go to bryanhabanafoundation.org and, donate on the website, see what we're doing. in South Africa, particularly for this present pandemic, we're really trying to, and I think I've probably given out just over 5,000 food parcels over the course of the last 12 weeks, and in so doing, just trying to make a difference. We're literally just hitting the height of winter, and in Cape Town in particular, I sort of look at the rain and the cold happening, and people not having warm clothes or blankets. So, donate on BryanHabanaFoundation.org, and in so doing, hopefully allow me to use those resources to make an impact in communities where not only is food insecurity and crime at its highest levels, but people are literally losing hope. And I think on this first weekend, I actually did some stuff with the Red Cross, and they said, going into these communities, people might be able to go without water and food for a couple of days, but as soon as they start losing hope, they lose everything. And I think for me, trying to, through the Bryan Habana Foundation, just through this humanitarian aid give back, allow those people to not lose hope, because having gone into these areas and seen firsthand, how bad the environments are, I definitely don't want to stop. But for that to happen, obviously resources are the main contributing factor, and I think collaboration as well. I've done some work with the Khaleesi Foundation, with Pick and Pay Feed the Nation, with the One SA movement, with the Red Cross, and I think collaboration, trying to together, making people understand that we can all be citizens in solidarity, and in so doing, making this world a better place.
It's wonderful that you're driving that. Do you have other rugby colleagues that are on board with you, or you're reaching out to?
Yeah, I've reached out to quite a few. I did a thing with the SA Rugby Legends yesterday with John Smith, Alfred Jantjies, Gavin Verigis, who's an incredible philanthropist here in South Africa. And I've done some fantastic work with Sia Khaleesi and his foundation. I think between myself, Sia, and the Pick and Pay Feed the Nation scheme, we gave out 1,500 parcels just over 4 weeks ago. So yeah, I mean, guys like Cheslin Colby and Justin Khadil, 7 stars and Springbok stars, doing some stuff through the, I think, Be the Difference Foundation, Skaran Tubeni. So yeah, definitely in South Africa we need permits to do charity, believe it or not. So it's about really finding out who has got permits, and in so doing, maybe make sure that we're not transgressing any laws.
Yeah, you got to do your paperwork.
Yeah.
You were awarded OIS by the President of South Africa. Can you explain to the viewers what that stands for and what it means?
Yeah, so the Order of Ikhamanga Silver. I actually don't know exactly, what it corresponds to. I'm not sure whether it's a OBE or MBE in the UK, but it's sort of something similar. So it's given. Yeah, I want to say almost accreditation of the impact that you've had in your sport or for your sport in South Africa. And I was fortunate to have, got that order, from the South African government alongside Percy Montgomery, Sean Pollock, and Makai Ntini in 2008. And yeah, extremely grateful knowing that what you did and how you portrayed yourself, not only as an athlete, but as a South African, had an impact in which you got recognition for. And again, I think people sometimes see it as iOS, which I definitely don't want it to be seen as, because even though I love Apple, not quite that, and not quite any future update for Tim Cook.
Well, absolutely well deserved there. Bryan, final question for you. Most embarrassing moment on or off the sports field?
Most embarrassing moment, and it's probably one of my biggest regrets, Dallen, within the rugby environment, was my dive in the 2014 final against Saracens for Toulon. I think as a rugby player, and the values that the game gives us, not only did I let myself down, my family down, but I let the game down, and in so doing, sort of really left a worryingly hole within me for a very long period of time. And I think, for us, those values within rugby that we respect the most, that we appreciate the most, was in that moment, something that I look back now and I'm extremely regretful for. I know there's a lot of, we all say that, you shouldn't have any regrets when you leave the game, and there's always going to be regrets. But I think that moment in particular, not only was it humiliating and embarrassing, but it definitely let down the person and player that I was, and also the values that I stood for as a rugby player and as a person. So, humiliating and embarrassing at the same time.
I thought you were going to say the Nolly Waterman tackle into the pool. But you planning something
that was
big
fun.
there? Yeah.
No, I think that wouldn't be embarrassed. But I actually needed the dip. It was quite hot in Cape Town in December, so I didn't mind getting tackled.
Well, Bryan, listen, you've given a nation hope for many years while representing the Springboks. You're now helping others in need around South Africa and the world. You're a true inspiration. We just want to thank you for all you do and, of course, for coming on the Rugby Hive.
Dallen, thank you very much for having me on the Rugby Hive. Not quite sure on which streaming podcast I'm going to get to watch this in a few weeks. But yeah, I think thank you for what you guys are doing. I know, the digital content creation that's happening at the present moment through this pandemic is something where, we've been able to get in touch with our supporters, given that live sport is unfortunately not happening. So thank you to you and Robin, for what you guys are giving and the platform you're allowing people to get involved, to stay involved and stay visually active. And yeah, hopefully you won't ever ask me to do any form of Rugby Hive challenge, because I'm going to probably vehemently say no.
No challenge, no challenges. But when we see you next, when the world does open up on the 7 Series, we'll certainly enjoy a good laugh and teaming up against some of those ambassadors that tend to get you when you're not expecting it.
Looking forward to it.
Beautiful ball over the top. Yes, Seppo!
Thank you for listening, you sleek sensations.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to Rugby Hive Podcast and catch us on all the socials at Rugby Hive.
We appreciate your support. Be safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
And take it.